With your jelly that you wanna get crazy, crazy. Shorty, take it slow, then chitty, chitty.
Bailiff, please call the first case.
All rise. UITM Country Youth Court is now in session. The Honorable Mr. Hirschan or Ray Herman now presiding.
Your Honor and the members of the jury, my name is HARON with student ID 20206266842 representing as Omar's lawyer. This case involving Omar, who has been followed and someone intentionally wanted to hurt my client. This happened right after Omar was riding his bike home from school after a football match in which his team was defeated by the greatest rival. Ahmad, a rival team fan, riding along with the same road as Omar, noticed him and decided to follow him from distance. After they reached a secluded place, Ahmad confronted Omar and kicked his bicycle, causing him to lose balance, falling and fracture his left leg. So in this trial, we ask you to grant him a request for a civil protection order.
Member of the jury, please rise and raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear to listen carefully to the evidence and arguments which are presented in this case and fulfill your duty to determine a sentence that is fair to the defendant, the victim, and the community? If so, say I do. You may be seated. Mr. Omar's lawyer, please present your opening statement.
Your Honor and members of the jury, we know that Ahmad is guilty of violating the law in the case of trespass to a person on the ground of battery, as that the battery has been considered an intentional act of interaction with a threatening or provocative contact with other people without that individual's permission in tort of law. The defendant's purpose for using force is the first essential component of the battery. In a case where a light squib was thrown inside an open marketplace by the defendant in Scott and Shepherd case, once the squib struck the plaintiff, it went up in flames. The defendant was convicted liable for the tort of trespass to the person. According to the judge, A and B respond for their own safety and therefore lack sufficient intention to dedicate the act. The second element is the act was under defendant control. The defendant action must be performed voluntarily. In the case of William and Humphrey, the defendant, a boy of around 16 years old, pushed the plaintiff into a swimming pool, causing him physical injury. The defendant was liable to have acted negligently by the judge and harm was granted. However, there was another assertion in the context of trespass. Talbot J. rejected the contention that the action will be invalid if there was no attempt to harm. If the act was clearly deliberate, there was no justifiable reason for it. As per Hay L., the jury resolved upon that judgment in the existing Order 14 proceeding.
I will start with the third element where there must be contact or the use of force occurs. If there is no intentional contact either on the body or clothing of the plaintiff, then for a person to be prosecuted under the law of tort battery is invalid. In the case of Collins v. Wilcott 1984 3AIIER 374, police officers suspected a woman was leading contrary to the street offences at 1959. However, our main focus is not on the woman who scratched the police, but the act of grabbing made by the police towards the woman. It indeed shows that he uses force to stop the woman from walking away. That is why the appeal was allowed, because the officer had gone beyond the scope of a duty to arrest the woman.
Now the last element that needs to be met is without the plaintiff consent. If a person wants to do something or treat something, he or she needs and must get consent from the party involved. This can be seen through the case Nash v. Shin 1953 CLY 3726, in which the defendant already put a twin wins without obtaining the consent of the plaintiff. In that case, even if the plaintiff agrees for the defendant to treat anything, it is necessary to obtain prior consent. As for now, I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Mr. Omar's lawyer, please present your case.
Thank you, Your Honor. Now I will make it clear. The first element is fulfilled when Ahmad starts to kick Omar's bicycle. He didn't kick Omar directly, instead he kicked the bicycle, causing Omar to lose his balance. It matched with the element of touching someone without their permission. This element was fulfilled based on the case of Scott versus Shepherd. The court held that the defendant was liable for the tort of trespass to a person, although his initial gesture did not directly affect the plaintiff. According to the court, A and B reacted over their safety and thus lacked the necessary intention to commit the act. Next, to address our issue, Ahmad kicks Omar's bicycle. Omar loses his balance, falls, and breaks his left leg as a result of Ahmad's action. In Williams versus Humphrey 1975, the defendant pushed the plaintiff into a swimming pool, causing him bodily harm. Though the defendant was initially convicted based on negligence, there was another conviction in the context of trespass to a person. So in our case, Ahmad has complete control of the situation. It was demonstrated when Ahmad followed Omar to a secluded place before approaching him and kicked his bicycle. This act shows that Ahmad had an intention and the act was under his control.
We move on to the element having contact or the use of force or cheer can be seen with reference to the case of Collin versus Wilcock 1984 3 AIIER 374, where the appeal was allowed because of the officer had gone beyond the scope of her duty to arrest the woman. Back to our case, where Ahmad's act to following Omar to a secluded area before coming up beside him and kicking Omar's bicycle clearly show that there is a contact which fulfill the element of contact. Lastly, for the final element, we can look at the case of Nash versus Shin 1953 CLY 3726 as a reference. It happened when the plaintiff went to the hairdressing salon, but there was an incident in which the defendant arbitrarily put a tone rinse without obtaining the consent of the plaintiff. It causes the plaintiff some skin complication, which is similar to Ahmad's actions toward Omar, where he come up beside him and kick his bicycle without any permission. So this element, which is without the plaintiff consent, also has been proven. I end my case presentation with no further argument, Your Honor. Thank you.
Plaintiff counsel, would you care to make a closing argument to the jury? Thank you, Your Honor. To conclude, Omar can take legal action against Ahmad who committed trespassing to a person on the grounds of battery under the law of tort, since all four elements of the battery had been fulfilled. Thank you. Stand. Repeat sentencing recommendation with supporting rationale.
Panda. I got broads in Atlanta. Just took the lean in the family. Credit cards and the scammers. Hitting the licks in the band. Legacies.